Hey everybody. Well, I couldn't get my equipment to work yesterday, and I think it's a problem with my camera, my face camera. So I am not using that. I'm using my built-in. So if my face looks a little fuzzy, I apologize. But I think that it will work better without the other one. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you about my new pattern, the Alaina Tote, which is really kind of cool, and also talk about how to think about saving your samples for your stitches. I always say to people that when you are working on decorative stitches, or even some of your just not so decorative stitches, if you have a sample that's really nice, save it. And I always like to tell people to stitch out on at least a 6-inch piece of fabric, and that way you, when you save it, you can use it as an applique or a reverse applique. So we're going to talk about that today. And before I get into that, though, I just want to mention a few things. Just to let you know, I'm going to show you my information for YouTube Live. It's usually the second Tuesday of the month, and I did try to do it yesterday, but was not successful, and I do think it's my face camera. So I think I'm going to have to change that and replace it. But it is the second Tuesday of the month. It's at noon Eastern time. My website is gailpatrice.com, and the name of my company is Gail Patrice Design. And if you're watching this today, I am a Bernina ambassador. I always make this announcement at the beginning of all of my YouTube classes or videos or whatever, that I am a Bernina ambassador, but I am not an employee. However, if you are going to be buying a new Bernina or Burnett sewing machine, serger, or software, any product that is valued at $1,000 and up, you are eligible, let me go back to my face camera, for a $100 rebate coupon. Now, I'm trying to be a little more clear about how this works. If you already purchased your machine, it does not count toward this offer today. It's from today going forward. So if you are buying a sewing machine, serger, or software, and you are going to, you're going to send me an email. I feel like I'm like today. Send me an email with your mailing address, the date of your purchase, and I will send you the coupon. I'll fill out my part. You'll fill out yours. This is a $100 cash rebate from Bernina Corporate in the United States as a thank you. It only is eligible for U.S. residents because it's Bernina of America that is doing this offer. And as I said, it's just a thank you from them for purchasing the machine or the software. Also, on this Saturday, I am going to be at Pins and Needles in Mount Kisco, New York, and we are going to be making a table topper, not this exact one, and like the two in back of me, but that same idea. We're going to be going over a lot of information about the sergers and how different components work, what makes a stitch look the way it does, and all of that stuff. So that should be really fun. So I hope if you are in the Mount Kisco area, you can join me. And it's kind of nice because it's only 90 miles away from where I live, so I can drive down, and I can drive home on Saturday night after the event is finished. And I've never been to Pins and Needles in Mount Kisco, so I'm excited to see it. I've heard it's a wonderful store, and I'll look forward to seeing anyone who can be there. Speaking of classes, the following Saturday, on May 25th, I am going to be doing a class on the brand new Alaina Tote, and you can register for that at gailpatrice.com. That registration is open and up and available. So, and that is on Zoom. It's from noon to 3:30 on that Saturday Eastern time. and I record all of my classes. You will receive the link for the recorded class within 24 hours after the class finishes, and you'll own the link forever. I always like to say to people, you don't have to worry if you don't have all of your fabrics and everything all set to go to stitch along with me. It's perfectly fine, and actually I think sometimes it's easier to learn if you just kind of watch and get the cadence of the class and what each technique is going to be. So you'll have the link, and then you can kind of watch it in segments. You can watch a section, stitch it out yourself, go back, click the next part, stitch that out, and go on. And that way you can work at your own pace, and you're not going to be nervous about keeping up. So anyway, let me just show you a few examples of that, because this is all going to tie in to today's class. So here is, I've got these over on the side table. Here is the first one, and this is the cover girl. This is the cover shot. So here's the first one, and these are all quilting weight cottons. And I got this beautiful batik, this kind of tan and white batik a couple of years ago. And I loved it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, and I hadn't used it, and I pulled it out of my stash, and I liked making this one kind of a tone on tone. It's really pretty. And the way we do this is the 3 panels that create the front and back are cut in one long length, and we do the stitching all together on this version of it, and then we cut it in half. And so you've already got your front and back all constructed. You've got your decorative stitching on the center panel. You've flat locked your 2 side panels to the center panel. And so it's very efficient and pretty good as far as timing goes on that. Let me show you another one. This is the second one that I did. And I changed up just a couple of things on it. I love this. This is a woven cover stitch. Let me flip these handles out of the way. A woven cover stitch. And what I did on this, you see that it is a little more tapered at the top than at the bottom. And I mentioned one time that in the last couple of months, I bought one of those cam snap setters. So what I did on this was I put snaps in on the side to kind of make an inverted pleat on that. And I also have a center snap as well. You don't need the snap setter for it if you have the hand strength to squeeze the ones that are kind of like, I guess like pliers. But I don't. I can never get them to sit straight and to sit tightly on the fabric. So I broke down and bought the table one, and I love it because it makes it super, super fast and easy to apply snaps and rivets and that sort of thing. Then here is the one that I just made and finished last week. And I used some ultra suede for the side panels. And I put, instead of decorative stitching on the center panel, excuse me, I used reverse appliques or windows on that. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Here's one side. Here is the other side. And these appliques or reverse appliques are all little pieces of decorative stitch samples that I did and saved, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. It's kind of messy, but that's okay. It's really great. I just keep a Ziploc bag just like this, and whenever I come up with a stitch that looks really nice, and I like the way the whole thing turned out, and I was just doing it as a test, not for the actual project itself, I don't toss it out once I'm done. I save it. So I can grab pieces like this and make them into appliques or reverse appliques. It doesn't matter which one you want to use. Here's another one that's really, really pretty. And you have seen this technique. Let me just move this out of the way. You have seen this technique on my laptop case as well, where I did a big one in the center on this side, but I did a bunch of different ones on this side. And this one is interesting. Let me bring it up closer. Actually, I'll put it under the other camera so that you can really see. This one was just a very small sample that I did. I just couched on some Serger chain, and I had already made the window for this, which was considerably larger. And you know yourself, once you've cut a hole in your fabric, there's no going back. So I thought, well, what am I going to do to use this? So I created another reverse applique with a window in it, and it's kind of like a mask, and that I was able to make with another small window that did fit this particular little applique. So that worked out. And the other ones are just random ones, and the different colors, it doesn't really matter. I think this fabric incorporates almost all of those colors, so it was really kind of cool. And just to show you exactly what I did on this one, these were little pieces of fabric that I had, and I just kind of fringed the edges, and I couched them on with chain stitching, decorative chain stitching, and that holds them in place on the orange background fabric. So that is how I use that. I just want to make sure that I mentioned, oh, there's one other thing that I wanted to mention. So let me put this off to the side for a second. For anyone who is waiting for their paint box and Bayside Blooms thread, I'm waiting for a shipment to come in from Wonderful. So I apologize for the wait, but I haven't received my shipment yet, and I will ship those out as soon as they arrive. I will not delay that because I know some of you have waited for quite a while, but they should be here soon. So I just want to get that squared away. Also, mentioning that, I still have my thread fusions. If you're thinking about getting that, here's the large one. This is the packaging it's in. The universal size is a smaller round one. If you have a smaller machine and you don't think that you need the extra or the larger one, you can certainly get that too. So going from that, let me just go over here. Now, let me show you an example first of something that I was doing for testing. I am making kind of a summary looking Alaina tote, and this is going to be the center fabric. It's kind of pretty. It's a cotton. It's not quite as heavy as a duck. I would say it's an upholstery weight cotton, and these lines are built into the fabric itself. They aren't wrinkles. But now I was auditioning different colors of thread on this, and I did the green one. I'm going to put that under the camera so you can actually see a little bit better. Let me move everything around here. And I'm going to bring that camera down so you can see a little more clearly. If I put the light on, it might help too. There we go. Okay, so the first one I did was this green one, and I have that dusty pink color in my needles. And I like that against this fabric too. I thought it was very pretty. And the side panels are sort of an abstract print that have some very soft yellow in them. So I thought, well, let me blend in some yellow with the green. And I really thought I liked it. And then, but I wasn't 100% sure. And I looked at it this morning and decided, you know what, I don't think I do like it. But the side fabric also has some soft blue in it. So I took this green and a very soft blue 12-weight thread. It's a wonderful spaghetti. And I put those together, and I think this one is the winner because I think that's a really pretty color, and that's a wide cover stitch with the two 12-weight threads in my chain looper using Thread Fusion. And I had my stitch length on the longest one, 4.5. I'm sure 4.0, if that's your maximum stitch length, would work perfectly fine. And I'm going to decide if I want to weave some ribbon through this, because I think it would be pretty for contrast against this fabric, because these are all such soft colors that I might put something that is a little bit bolder underneath here. But now this is just a sample length of fabric. I'm going to save this because this might come in handy to use as an applique later on. And it's just a big long piece of fabric, and I may do some other stitching on it over time because I've got enough open space. Oh, here are some other ones. All right, so here is an 8-weight thread that I used, and I just decided, I think I used 2 8-weight threads. I did, and I thought it was a little dense. Let me put that under the close-up camera too, just to get a better look. I thought this was a little bit too dense, and I did want to weave something through it. This was the very first one that I did, and I used that same green and sort of a baby pink on it. And I think it's very pretty, and I may go back and revisit this again and put some different color contrasting ribbon underneath it and see if it pops. But by itself, it really kind of just blends into the background fabric color. So I'm going to put it aside and maybe test out some different color ribbon and see if I like that, because I do like the combination of that soft pink and soft green together. So let's talk about the windows and what they are. The windows that I use for the reverse appliques are basically just facings. So if you've ever made something with, say, a jewel neckline or something sleeveless, and it has a facing on the inside to finish the edge, that's basically all this is. And then you can do some stitching around it to kind of add in. But I do have some tips for you on making the facings look really nice and the whole face of your project to look really nice. And I want to show you the difference between the front and back on these, because it is kind of interesting. This one, again, it was a sample. I did a woven cover stitch. I had that thick and thin yarn that I wove through the stitching on this. And I had just gotten my cam snap setter, I think the day before. And so I was going crazy with the rivets. I just love them. So I thought this was kind of a cool thing to try out. And I may incorporate this technique into the next tote bag, which I'll show you probably in the class because it should be done by then. But this is this. But look at the back of it. You can see all it is appliques. Now, this incorporates what I'm going to talk about with making the front, the public side, look really, really nice. And I'll put that under the close-up camera as well. There it is. So you can see I went crazy with the rivets. And this was just a sample that I had in my Ziploc bag. This is a thick and thin yarn going through. This one I decided I better save some of the rivets just in case I actually need them for a real project. But when you're doing this, it's always a good idea to keep a few things in mind so that it looks nice and smooth when you actually do your project. So let me put this aside, and I'm going to show you the first couple of steps on this. Number one, let me talk this through first. When you're doing these projects with windows, you don't want to make a mistake on where you place them, simply because, as I said before, once you've cut the hole, you're all set, you're all done. So what I did when I was deciding where these appliques or reverse appliques were going to go was I took little sample pieces of fabric and cut them to the sizes that I thought I wanted. And I had time to fiddle around with those and get them exactly where I wanted them on the project. And I just had a piece of fabric that was the same size as the center panel for the part that shows, so that I could get an accurate idea of placement. And this is how I do that. Let me find my, okay. So here we are. This is just a scrap piece of fabric, and I had some little scraps of fusible fleece that I took and cut the same size, and I pinned them on. And I can play around with where I wanted them. I could move this up or down or side to side. And when I got something that I thought was a pleasing look to that, I stuck with that, and I measured it and marked it on my actual project fabric. So it made it kind of foolproof and easy to make sure that I was going to be happy with the final placement. So that is how I go about doing that. Nothing magical about it at all. And I just pin them on and then move them according to whether I want them up, down, or sideways. Now, one other thing that I discovered the hard way is that on the center panel on the Alaina tote, it's cut 7.5 inches wide. The thing that I didn't factor in on the first piece that I did was when you stitch the windows, what happens is it draws in the edges of that 7.5 inch width a little bit and skews it. I think it was off like about 1/4 of an inch, and it made it crooked. Now, I could have just trimmed the edge and made it straight again, but I really wanted to keep the dimensions true because these are samples that people look at, and I wanted them to have an accurate idea of what the finished dimensions of the bag are. And as you know, with tote bags and purses or anything else, you can change those dimensions. If you wanted something slightly larger, you could cut it wider and longer. Or if you want something smaller, you can cut it narrower and shorter. But as I said, I wanted those dimensions to stay true. So I redid that center panel, and to start with, I cut it about 9 inches wide and then trimmed it down to the 7.5 inch width. So that was an important lesson for me to learn, and I'm glad that I had enough extra fabric to do that. So let's go over to the close-up camera, and I'm going to show you the start of this and tell you a few things that I have learned along the way. Okay, so the first thing is you're going to decide on the shape of your applique. This one I decided to do a round one, and I have a template that I use with different size circles on it, and I traced it, and then I stitched around. Now I like to use a short stitch, about 2.0, sometimes even a little bit shorter, because I find that the shorter the stitches, the easier it is to really stay on the line that I've traced. And I have the traced edge on the facing fabric itself. Here is the actual pretend project fabric underneath it. And I would have marked the placement of this accurately stitched around it. The next step would be to cut right through both layers. And because this is a circle, I cut a bunch of clips in it to make it turn nicely. And you can see that the facing is considerably larger. Let me move this out just a little bit. And this is one of my first tips. And there is a very definite reason for it. The facing is larger by quite a bit than where the applique is. Number one, the reason for that is to make it easier to handle. It's much easier than trying to cut something down to be within 3/4 of an inch of the edge. Can you do it? Yes, you can, but it's kind of a pain, and why not make it easier? You can always trim away the excess after you've completed that whole area. However, if you noticed on this one, let me move this for just a second, I left the facing fabric wider than the applique fabric, which is this batik, and it acts like a little mask that hides the edges of this. And I left the shape fairly irregular as well because I thought that would also help mask it. And here's that smaller applique that you can see very clearly that I left the full width of the facing fabric intact on this and just trimmed away a little bit more of the applique fabric. But that way you don't see any lines at all, even though there is interfacing on this. Sometimes things can show through, especially if you're using a heavier fabric for your applique. That extra width on the facing fabric will hide it and disguise it a little bit. So we've gotten our two pieces. We've placed it and stitched it. We've cut through both layers, and I've clipped. And another thing is too, with the clipping, you want to make sure that you clip right up to the stitching line. Don't cut through it, but clip right up to the stitching line. And I strongly suggest having a pair of nice sharp scissors to do that. Another great thing to do is if you want to hide that hard edge of the cutout, pinking shears are fantastic for that as well, because they have that little zigzag or almost like a rickrack edge on them, and that is also very good for hiding it. It also makes clipping, a lot of times if you cut close enough, you can eliminate all of the clipping. So, and I have a pair of Kai pinking shears that I love, because pinking shears can be very heavy and stiff on your hands to cut with. And I find the Kai ones are really smooth to use, they're easy to use, and they're nice and sharp. I don't have any affiliation with them at all, but that's just an observation I have. I've had a few different pairs of pinking shears, and they work fine, but they've been heavy and hard on my hands. So, okay, so that's that. Then the next thing would be you're going to turn your facing to the wrong side, and you're going to press it back. And I take my time pressing because I want it to look nice, as smooth as I possibly can, and get that nice looking circle on that. And I'll check it from the front side. Now, I would probably go back and press this because you can see a little bit of the facing edge here. But is it really all that critical if you see a teeny bit of it peeking out? I don't think so. Because once you have that applique in, the applique is so visually interesting that typically nobody's going to notice some little bit of the facing peeking out. So I don't get myself too worked up about that. So let me come back to me. Okay, good. So you'll probably see something in an upcoming video that has this. Oh, and let me see what we have. Hi, Mary Strong. Good morning. Kim, hi. And, you know, I'm sorry if you tuned in yesterday and you didn't see me. It wasn't your fault. It was my equipment fault. So I hope that, you know, we'll get some more people to see this in the recording, which oh, and I think I forgot to hit the recording button. So, oh well. Anyway, so I am going to do some more of the work on this newer one. And let me just show you the stitching that I did on this. Maybe I can hit the recording on this right now. So here was the winner with that light blue and the green. And let me put that under the close-up camera. I think this is really a pretty color. Let me bring the camera in closer so you can see. And that's using the thread fusion. You can see the green and the blue really blend together. And I used a dustier pink for the needle threads on this so that I could get that. Bobby says she loves the thread fusion. Yeah. Oh, and that you use the same pinking shears. Yeah, I really, really like that too. Hi, Janet. Hi, Judy. So that's what this is looking like. And this stitch length is 4.5. And I am going to decide on what I want for a thread. I was originally with the one with the yellow in it going to use a gray thread, which I found in Michael's. It's kind of a charcoal gray. And that one was kind of cool. It was the only spool that I've ever seen with a gray 1/8 inch wide satin ribbon, and I just picked it up not knowing what I'd use it for, but I think it might be kind of dull under those colors, so I think I'll probably pick up either a darker blue that's in that side panel fabric, or even white. There's a lot of white in the background on that, so I think that, oh, hi Celeste. I think I'll pick one of those, but you'll be seeing some of that as I go along too. And I am going to do something with a reverse applique on that. Also, just so that you know, if you don't want to do a reverse applique and you want to do a regular applique, you can create, you can stitch around the edges or do a raw edge applique. And stitch around the edges and do kind of a facing on that. And a lot of times what I've done with that, so that it doesn't add a lot of thickness or bulk, is use a fusible interfacing, where I have the fusible side face up when I stitch it to the right side, then I cut a slit in the middle of the interfacing, flip it to the wrong side, and when I go to stitch it, it fuses to the wrong side of the applique itself. So I think that you could use it with either reverse appliques or standard regular appliques on that too. I didn't want to leave that out of the possibility for doing your embellishing. So I hope that helps. Also, one other thing that I wanted to mention, I think we still got a few minutes. Somebody had sent me a comment on the seam allowance YouTube video that I did a few months back, and where I had drawn a line for my seam allowance. And I just wanted to mention in this that I do not draw lines on my fabric. I don't draw lines on my projects or anything else, but I was doing that simply to show illustration and show that just because you're using a 5/8 inch seam, the knife is trimming away part of that 5/8 inch seam, or 1/2 inch, or 1/4 inch, or whatever with seam allowance your project calls for. But just for illustration purposes, because the comment was, oh, so you can only use the indicator ridges on the toe of your foot if you draw lines on your project. No, but I was just showing how the indicator ridges allow me to follow along. But the thing that I use as my guideline on actual projects is, once I've got my needles set, if I'm doing a 4-thread overlock with the left and right needles in, or a 3-thread wide with just the left in, that left needle would be positioned, say 5/8 of an inch from the edge on something that called for that as my specific seam allowance, or 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch away from the raw edge of the fabric. But then once I start stitching, what I keep an eye on is my knife and how wide a piece is that trimming off the edge of the fabric. And that makes it very easy for me to be accurate. If my machine right now is set up for a cover stitch because I was doing some of this playing around before I came on live, and I would show it to you on that if I had it set up for overlock. But anyway, I just wanted to make that clear that when you start stitching, if your needle is lined up at the correct distance from the edge of your fabric. And in a 4-thread overlock or a 3-thread wide, it would be your left overlock needle. If I were doing a narrower stitch on the edge with just my right, I would line that up either 5/8 from the edge or 3/8 or 1/4 inch or whatever, 1/2 inch. Then if you watch how much your knife is trimming off, the width of what's being trimmed away, that is going to keep that seam allowance accurate. When you trim off part of that 5/8, are you going to see 5/8 of an inch left on the fabric? No, only if your knife is down and you're not trimming off any. But your seam allowance is still accurate. So I hope that clarifies it for some people, because I think seam allowance seems to be a big sticking point on that. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say, speaking of seam allowances and stitching, is that these windows are stitched on my sewing machine. You can use a chain stitch on your serger, but I think it's easier, particularly with small circles and things, to maneuver the fabric on a sewing machine with a straight stitch. And also another tip on that is that I lower the presser foot pressure on my sewing machine also, especially if I'm doing circles that have tight curves. Again, just the way I've done it with decorative stitching that are in curves on my serger, I lower the presser foot pressure, and it makes it easier to maneuver the fabric around under the foot for nice smooth curves. Same exact thing in principle on your sewing machine. So that I do on that, but I do like to use my really pretty thread fusion and regular stitching for appliques. You can see right through here. So that is the story on that. Did anyone have any questions at all about anything? I hope everything is pretty clear. And again, if you're in the New York area, in the Mount Kisco area, call Pins and Needles and sign up for the class. I'd love to see you there. I'm actually going to see somebody who is following me on YouTube, and she said she'll be down there and sign up for the class, so that's exciting. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention also is I just got a new shipment in of my locking forks. So you can see I've got the red and the blue. So you have your choice of colors on those, whatever suits you. And I don't know if you saw the post that I did on Instagram, but the way I store this, and it's so handy, is that the handle has a little hole in it to start with. And I put a ribbon through it and took a command strip hook that you can buy anywhere. You can buy them at Home Depot, any of the hardware stores, I think in the craft stores, almost anywhere. And I have it on the side of my serger, and it just sticks to it. It doesn't leave any residue or anything. And I can hang this up, and I always know exactly where it is. So I can hang it up right here, and then when I go to use it, I can grab it from there. And it is metal. I've had some people ask me, is it plastic or metal? It's metal. And very sturdy. It'll last. And you can see it's got my logo on it, part of my logo anyway. And so those are available, and super handy to use. Those will work on any machine that you're using, whether you're doing cover stitching on a combo machine or on a dedicated cover stitch machine. It's also great for air threading if you're using multiple threads and you're using a thread cradle through the air threading tubes to pull multiple threads through. I find that I can grab that thread cradle out from the air threading tubes once I unlock them with the fork. And then it's easy to use the bypass brackets for multiple threads, especially if I'm using, like say, 2 8-weight threads, which are sort of heavy, and I don't like to use those in the air threading tubes to go through the whole machine. Oh, Bobby says that little hole is genius. You're always searching for your other one. I know. And it makes it so handy just to hang it up on the side of the machine. And plus it won't harm your machine or cause any residue or anything that's kind of yucky looking on your machine. If you wanted to take the hook off for any reason or change it out for something else, it works really well. So this is a really handy dandy little tool to have in your things for surging. So anyway, if anyone doesn't have any more questions, I think that will do it for today. So I wanted to just talk about that, talk about if you're going to do a window on a specific width of fabric and your pattern calls for a very specific width, when you cut it first, cut it wider and or longer, and then after your applique or reverse applique is all complete, you can true it up to whatever your pattern calls for on the dimensions. So that is something that I learned when I was doing this pattern, and I wanted to pass it along to you. But if you want to register for the Alaina Tote Bag, that is on Saturday, March 25th from 12 to 3:30 Eastern Time. You will receive the recorded link within 24 hours of the class. You'll own it forever, and you don't have to worry about having all of your equipment, and that will include the pattern, which has all the cutting instructions and the yardage requirements. And what I used for handles on mine was webbing, and I just wanted to show you one other thing, and I have to just jump out of my seat and get it. It just dawned on me because this is kind of cool to show. Hold on just a second. I'll be right back. Okay. On my latest tip clip, you saw that you can use the Baby Lock belt loop binders on your Bernina L890. It doesn't require any kind of a fix other than if you don't have the screws that screw into the cover hem table on that, and all of that is in the tip clip, you can purchase those. But what I did with these handles, I was just getting some of the components ready for this new tote bag. I used the webbing. I'm going to put it under the close-up camera. I think you can get a better picture of what I'm talking about. Okay, so the navy blue is just the plain webbing. And what I did for the trim on this, just to dress it up a little bit, was I used the narrower belt loop binder. I think it's the 5/8 belt loop binder for Baby Lock on this. I just ran the fabric through this is a piece of the side panels on that new tote that I'm doing. I ran it through, and then I just zigzagged it onto the webbing. And so here's the plain webbing, but I just thought this would kind of dress it up and make it look really pretty. So that was the narrow one, but both will fit on your machine. So that's just something I wanted to show you as well. And it is kind of cool, especially if for people who had traded in their Baby Locks for the L890. I know I had all of the feet and different attachments to the Triumph and the Ovation, so I still have them, and but I can use the belt loop binder on the 890, so that's really great news, and it works really, really well. So Diana asked if I could repeat the date. So it is a week from this Saturday. It is Saturday, May 25th, 12 to 3:30 Eastern Time. And the other thing I want to mention too is that if you can't join the class live, you can, when you get the recorded link, you'll have that, and you can certainly send me any questions and email that you have along the way, even if you can't ask them in the live class. I always get back to people very quickly on those questions. So I apologize that you didn't get to see the beginning of this if you're watching the recorded version of this later on. I forgot to hit the recording button, but most of the information is the same. I just talked about, let me just say it one more time, the ambassador coupon. If you're buying a sewing machine, serger, or software from Bernina, any purchase that's valued at $1,000 and up is eligible for this. And that is going forward from today's video for the next few weeks. So you can shoot me an email with your mailing address on that. And I think that pretty much covers it. The only other thing you might not have seen if you're watching the recording is I was showing my messy bag of samples that I keep for my appliques and reverse appliques. So I do exactly what I tell you to do. Just pop them into a Ziploc bag, save them, and you can fish them out and match up the ones that work. Now, I will tell you, on this new one, I don't work a lot in pink. So I did have to create a few appliques for this one, but this will go in a future project. It's kind of a, you can see it up close. It's a pretty color. It's nice. It's kind of a dusty pink, and those lines are, they're not wrinkles. They're in the fabric itself. So I think that covers everything. And if you do want to register for the class, you can go to gailpatrice.com and scroll down, and you'll see, hit the registration, and that will walk you through all of that. So I hope you can join me for that, and I'll look forward to seeing people at Pins and Needles in Mount Kisco this weekend, which should be really, really fun. And if you're looking for this yesterday, I apologize. I'm going to figure out what is wrong with that other camera, and I may have to replace it. But anyway, in the meantime, I hope you have a great day. Happy sewing and serging. And if you have any questions about what I presented today, just shoot me an email, and I will get back to you. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the week. Take care.